28 men were aboard a ship in the Antarctic Ocean when disaster struck. Their vessel became hopelessly trapped within millions of tons of impenetrable ice. For 7 grueling months, they were marooned, their ship motionless, held fast by the frozen sea. Then, one night, a massive, echoing sound resonated from beneath the hull, and the ship suddenly lurched violently to one side. It felt as if some colossal force below had attempted to shove the entire vessel. What happened next was beyond their wildest nightmares. Welcome back to another thrilling story from Deep Dive Diaries. The Antarctic Ocean is a realm of unimaginable danger, waves as tall as buildings, winds that rage at over 100 kilometers per hour, and water so cold it thickens the human blood, threatening to freeze one's very soul. To sail here is to court disaster. Even if a crew manages to survive the brutal cold and mountainous waves, colossal icebergs, frozen behemoths the size of mountains, possess the power to crush any ship effortlessly. Yet, 111 years ago, long before the age of advanced technology and reinforced modern vessels, a group of 28 men found their ship ensnared in this terrifying wilderness. Open to the merciless elements, they spent not mere weeks or months, but an astonishing 2 full years battling for survival. As far as the eye could see, there was only ice, hurricane-force winds, a crippling shortage of food, and absolutely no hope of calling for help. This is a tale of human fortitude so profound that the world christened it the greatest survival story of all time. The hero of this epic saga was Sir Ernest Shackleton, a celebrated polar explorer. His mission was not merely to conquer a geographic pole, but to conduct an ultimate test of human endurance, pushing the limits of the body's strength and will. It was this very principle that led him to name his ship the Endurance. Shackleton had a history of undertaking perilous expeditions. In 1901, he was part of a mission to reach the Antarctic, but they were forced to turn back a mere 750 kilometers from their goal. He embraced the challenge again in 1907, only to be forced to retreat just 150 kilometers shy of success. Now, in 1914, his ambition had grown even bolder. His plan was not just to reach the Antarctic coast, but to achieve the first-ever transcontinental crossing of the frozen continent on foot. Sir Ernest Shackleton was driven by the desire to accomplish something that no one in human history had ever dared attempt. This audacious venture was officially named the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. The call for crew. The inherently suicidal nature of the mission made it incredibly difficult to recruit a crew. Shackleton's first challenge, therefore, was finding men willing to face such extreme peril. He penned a now legendary advertisement and had it published in the Times newspaper. This was no ordinary tourist operator's bulletin. Its opening lines were famously stark: "Men wanted for hazardous journey." The advertisement explicitly warned potential recruits wages would be very low. They would face continuous, deadly cold, endure months of total darkness, confront constant, life-threatening dangers, and receive no guarantee of a safe return. Shackleton was appealing directly to those who were unafraid to stare danger in the face, seeking not just sailors, but adventurers. He soon assembled a crew of 27 men, ready to embark on the journey of a lifetime. Shackleton had spent 4 years meticulously planning the expedition. However, as the departure date drew near, his dreams seemed destined to fade. World War I had erupted. Everyone assumed the expedition would be instantly cancelled. Yet, Britain, despite having declared war, granted permission for the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition to proceed. For the mission, an exceptionally robust ship was required, one capable of slicing through the ice-choked waters of the Antarctic Ocean. Fortuitously, such a vessel already existed, originally built in Norway for an Arctic exploration company that intended to take wealthy elite on polar bear hunts. When the business model failed, Sir Ernest purchased the ship and christened it Endurance. She was purpose-built from thick American oak, designed to withstand the crushing pressure of pack ice. The Endurance was a hybrid vessel, equipped with both sails and an engine. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. On August 8, 1914, the Endurance set sail from Plymouth, England. For the next 4 months, they sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, first heading to Argentina and then to South Georgia Island. After completing their final preparations there, they turned the ship's direction toward the Weddell Sea in the Antarctic Ocean on December 5, 1914. Aboard the Endurance were the 28 crew members, along with 50 large breed sled dogs intended for hauling supplies across the Antarctic ice. The journey continued for 46 days, and they were just a single day away from reaching the coast of Antarctica. Then, on January 18, 1915, their first major obstacle appeared. In the Weddell Sea, the layers of ice grew progressively thicker, eventually reaching a depth of 18 feet. The Endurance simply did not possess the strength to smash through this dense pack ice. Yet, the ice was also too fragile in places to begin the overland crossing on foot. The ship was hopelessly frozen in place, approximately 130 kilometers short of their intended landing spot, Boswell Bay. What initially seemed like a temporary setback soon became the mission's catastrophic, defining problem. For several days, they attempted to force their way through. Eventually, they decided to manually move the 300-ton ship. For 2 continuous days, the exhausted crew hacked away at the ice, attempting to carve a path forward. The task proved far more difficult than they had imagined. After days of backbreaking labor, they managed to advance the ship a mere 300 meters before she became jammed once again. After a month of relentless, failed attempts to free the vessel, on February 14, 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton finally conceded defeat. He made the difficult decision to abandon efforts to move the ship and instead allow the Endurance to drift with the natural movement of the pack ice, hoping the ice would break up with the change of seasons. Life aboard the floating prison. The Endurance was transformed into a temporary winter station. The crew settled into a routine, the only difference being that their ship was now a stationary. Their morale remained surprisingly high, and Shackleton maintained strict discipline. To keep themselves busy and stave off the mental toll of isolation, they engaged in discussions, played soccer on the ice, gave each other haircuts, and passed time cooking. They waited with grim patience for the day the ice would shatter, freeing them to continue their journey or retreat to safety. As the days turned into months, the crew grew closer, even developing deep emotional bonds with the dogs. Everyone held on to the hope that the drift would eventually carry them toward civilization. But fate had a different plan. In April 1915, the ice did begin to break up, but the intense, building pressure caused the massive layers of ice to ride up over one another, an unexpected and terrifying event. Millions of tons of compressed ice began to exert a destructive pressure on the Endurance. The immediate priority was to relieve this pressure, and the crew worked tirelessly to clear the ice around the hull. This immediate threat passed after a few weeks, but the danger was far from over. On the night of July 14, 1915, a sudden, powerful crash was heard beneath the ship, and the Endurance listed sharply to one side. No one knew the cause. Was it a collision with a whale, or something far worse? The night passed in fear, but the sight that greeted them at dawn was shocking. The crushing layers of compressed ice had not only listed the ship, but had completely shattered her rudder, the mechanism used to steer the vessel. 7 agonizing months had passed since the crew became trapped, and they were now a minimum of 2,000 kilometers from any human settlement, with no way to communicate or call for rescue. Their only hope rested entirely with Sir Ernest Shackleton. The loss of the Endurance. By October 18, 1915, the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition was a complete ruin. For 9 months, the crew had been frozen in the same spot. Then, one night, an enormous wave of pressure struck, instantly tilting the Endurance a shocking 30 degrees. Water began leaking into the ship through new cracks. The entire crew worked through the night to prevent the influx of water, but the structural integrity of their shelter was compromised beyond repair. On October 27, 1915, realizing that the ship was doomed and that only an evacuation could save their lives, Sir Ernest Shackleton gave the order to abandon ship. They salvaged vital supplies, animals, food, the precious lifeboats, and bedding. The entire crew was forced out onto the frozen sheet under the open, frigid sky. The ship that had been their home and their sanctuary for months now crumbled before their eyes, slowly breaking apart under the ice's tremendous pressure before sinking beneath the waves. The question that hung heavy in the air was simple: how long could they survive on a floating raft of ice? Sir Ernest Shackleton quickly determined that staying put was a death sentence. He knew of Paulet Island, located 550 kilometers away, which was believed to have a shelter and supplies from a previous expedition. However, reaching it with just 3 lifeboats was a near-impossible feat. The same ice that crushed their massive ship would easily destroy the small boats. The decision was made to attempt the incredible. They would walk to Paulet Island. They began their march toward what would become the most dangerous phase of their entire adventure. For the next 6 months, the crew faced constant, mortal danger. The ice floes they camped on would frequently crack open or begin to drift with the currents. Fortunately, the ice sheets were slowly, naturally drifting in the general direction of Paulet Island. Shackleton, realizing this, made the strategic decision to remain on the drifting ice floe, using it as a slow, natural transport toward their destination. Food and water were running dangerously low. The crew survived by hunting whatever animals they could find on the floating ice, primarily penguins and seals. By February 1916, they were 13 months into their epic journey. Conditions had deteriorated so severely that their daily ration was reduced to a single biscuit per man. By the following month, their wait for Paulet Island became so desperate that they were forced to make the grim choice to kill their sled dogs to provide necessary sustenance. The men hoped that reaching Paulet Island would grant them access to supplies. But the drifting ice island had a mind of its own. It changed direction, carrying them past Paulet Island and instead toward the even more remote Elephant Island. For days, they were battered by ferocious storms at sea. The temperature plummeted to a terrifying -20 degrees Celsius, and several crew members suffered severe frostbite. Their mouths and tongues swelled so badly that swallowing became nearly impossible. Against all odds, by April 1916, using the broken ice sheet as their raft, they managed to reach Elephant Island. For the first time in 16 grueling months, they stood on solid, non-drifting ground. They finally took a sigh of relief, but Elephant Island was completely barren, offering no chance of long-term survival, especially once their meager food supply was gone. Only one last, desperate hope remained: South Georgia Island, located a harrowing 1,300 kilometers away. Sir Ernest Shackleton made the suicidal decision to attempt the voyage to South Georgia in one of the small lifeboats. He selected 5 of the fittest crew members, and on April 24, 1916, they departed Elephant Island. This route is considered one of the most treacherous sea passages on Earth. They faced waves that crested at 90 feet, and the cold was so brutal that every part of their bodies began to freeze. To compound their danger, they were forced to navigate this journey without a GPS or a compass, relying solely on the stars and the sun to chart their course. Despite their monumental efforts, they could only cover a maximum of 80 kilometers per day. After 16 harrowing days at sea, on May 10, 1916, Sir Ernest Shackleton and the 5 chosen crew members successfully reached the coast of South Georgia Island. However, they were on the wrong, uninhabited side of South Georgia. Towering before them were colossal mountains, some reaching 4,000 feet in height. They embarked on an unrelenting 36-hour climb, finally emerging on the other side where they found a whaling station. Shackleton was in such a wretched state of exhaustion and disfigurement that the whalers barely recognized him. No one could believe that Sir Ernest, who had set out almost 2 years earlier, had arrived in this condition. After 3 days of rest, Shackleton's focus returned immediately to the 22 men he had left behind in dire straits on Elephant Island. He immediately began attempts to rescue them, facing several failed efforts due to impassable ice. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, through his sheer determination, a plume of smoke was spotted in the distance rising from Elephant Island, a signal fire lit by the marooned crew. Shackleton had no idea how many of his men had survived. However, as the rescue ship drew closer, He was astonished to find every single member of the Elephant Island crew alive and relatively well. On August 8, 1914, they had first sailed from England. 2 years and 22 days later, Sir Ernest Shackleton had delivered his entire team safely home. Though he never fulfilled his original mission, having failed 2 earlier attempts to reach the South Pole and getting trapped 120 kilometers from his trans-Antarctic goal. This extraordinary story of survival earned him a reputation that a completed mission could never have provided. It stands as a testament to unparalleled leadership and resilience. The legacy of the Endurance. 107 years after the disaster, in the year 2022, the wreck of the Endurance was finally located in the Antarctic Ocean. The ship remains perfectly preserved on the ocean floor, 3,000 meters beneath the surface. Remarkably, even the name etched on her stern can still be clearly read. We hope you enjoyed this incredible story from Deep Dive Diaries. Thank you for all your wonderful comments and support. We'll see you in the next fascinating video.